After the lead work was done, I went ahead and sprayed a coat or two of epoxy primer down, and then I had to do some final body work to blend it in. And the reason I put the epoxy down was back when I was first starting to use lead, I was working with another restorer, and he always told me that Bondo didn't stick all that great to lead work. So we started putting a coat of epoxy down before our mud work, and I just use the mud work because I'm not that good at lead yet, and it always takes a little bit more finesse for me to get it done. So once the body work was roughed in, I went ahead and fixed any work that needed to be done to the roof. Even though it's a brand new skin, it still had a little bit of work to do, including making a nice fit between the roof and the window reveal moldings, which required a little bit of cutting, welding, and hammering around. And then sanded the whole thing down with some epoxy, and I gave it 2 coats of an epoxy primer. When I was metalworking the deck lid, I took the time to weld welding rod to the edge of the deck lid on both sides in order to get a nice 3/16 inch gap. You might choose to use a dent fix gap tool like this to help you while you're making your gaps. Also, when I was doing the metal work and the mud work, I used steel rubbers weather seals along the inside here in order to make sure that I was going to have the right height on my deck lid. In the future, I'll go ahead and stick a bunch of pieces of paper in here. I'll crawl up in the trunk, and wherever that paper is loose, I'll know that I need to adjust my seal so that I got a good watertight seal. Also, steel rubber makes these trunk weather gaskets long, and rather than cutting it here in the mock-up phase, I just went ahead and bunched it up a little bit tighter, which does make it firmer, but it's actually working out for me. Don't try those cheap weather seals that you'll get out of some of those companies out there, because they're too firm and they'll end up hiking the level of your deck lid way up past the deck filler and the quarters, and it'll be very difficult to work with. Steel rubber is expensive product, but it's a very good product. While I was at Photo Finish, we used to skim coat with body filler all panels from edge to edge and block them out with a little bit of 80 and finish them in 150 so that we could put urethane primer on it and block them out straight. Nowadays I've changed and I've started using a high build polyester primer, so I no longer skim coat an entire panel unless it's got bodywork in all different areas. But when I started working at Hot Rod's Old Vale, I was working with some really high-end hot rodders who do paint and body work, and started realizing that they do a skim coat between panels to really sweeten up panel alignment. So after you're done getting your nice 3/16 inch gap, what I've done on the past 2 or 3 cars is I've just taken and skim coated between the panels and blocked them out together. I let the filler go ahead and run down into the seam because that really locks in, along with the weather strip, the panels together so that when I'm blocking, they're not moving in and out. And that's a technique that I've also learned since starting to follow some of the high-end builders on Instagram. Now in the front of the car here, we've gone ahead and set on an original OE hood, some NOS, never been used before, brand new from GM, fenders on both sides. We've got an OE cowl grill and aftermarket header and lower valance. Also, I've gone ahead and put the wheel tubs in so that when we go to blocking, we're not getting any of that flexing, or we're getting a true shape of what the car is going to be. You can see here that on the fenders we've got the original 50-year-old E-coat, and over the years that E-coat didn't truly seal up the metal, and you'll notice that there's a little bit of surface pitting that goes a little bit deep, so we're going to go ahead and metal prep that. But first we'll go ahead and sweeten up our areas here like we did with the backs of the doors to the quarters, making sure we got really nice gaps. We'll strip this all down, get it cleaned up very good, metal prepped, and then we'll be able to skim coat the doors and block them out so that they're ready. Okay, now our area's been metal prepped and stripped down with this green 3M 40 grit, given a good coat. You can see it's nice and clean, and I'm going to wipe right over this fender to door seam. So in an attempt to minimize some of the mess back in here, I've masked off with 1.5 and 3/4 that way, and then off the door flange here I've also taken 1.5 to try and minimize the amount of slop that's going to come through from the filler.
Yeah, which my buddy Mark's doing. I've had a couple of friends that have been on that. Yeah, and they said it's to become a real world champion, you have to have some crazy drives.
Still, you know, I'm not 40, right? I'm not 38, and
After we got the metalwork done over the wheel arch on the left fender, where there was like 6 or 7 pretty decent little storage dents put into the fender, we went ahead and stripped that EDP down with a clean strip wheel. Same thing on the right fender. There was a few dents in it, and I still got one to fix, and then we stripped it down. But now we're going to take a closer look at the hood. As we said earlier in the video, we've got an OE hood. It's the straight hood for 67, probably 68, same thing. It's got the original lacquer on it. And then on the bottom side, it's been sandblasted and of course left to sit for what, it's probably in its 2nd or 3rd year since it got blasted. So there's all the surface rust to clean up. I don't know that I'm going to worry about all that because I've already got a ton of time in this project. I'm thinking that I'll bring it down to the lower flange here and get all that stripped up for my epoxy, and then I'll let the painter worry about the bottom side. But this being an older hood, a 50-some-odd-year-old hood, we've got quite a few dents to worry about, including a pretty extreme stretch here where there was probably a wrench or something left on the air cleaner and then it got closed once, or I don't know, I'm only guessing at this point. The front of the hood throughout here is pretty beat up, and then when we close the hood, the arch isn't quite the same, or the angle of the hood isn't quite the same as the rest of the car. It's a little flatter, almost like it's down, you know, a little flatter. So we'll probably get a little bit rough body man with it and put something like a 2x4 right here over the striker plate and just go ahead and crank down to try and get what looks like probably an 1/8 to 1/4 inch of arch put. And then it's still got that original paint on it, which is going to be a bear to strip because that lacquer just gums up any abrasive. It sometimes works good with aircraft chemical stripper, and it sometimes doesn't. And to tell you the truth, I don't really want to get into the mess of all that. So I think I will just go the old school route and strip it, trying to keep the heat down. But right there you can see all, so I took a sanding block and you can see how I revealed all the, you know, massive amount of dents throughout the front. But I would consider this to overall be a pretty nice hood. Alright, my setup for bending the hood to angle it more towards the header and fenders is to just put a mold clamp on this side with a ratchet strap and a short 2x4 over the striker in the center, and then I'm just going to push down on that side. Thank God I don't need much. That's probably good. Hey, look at that. After 3-4 times of playing around with it, we've got it pretty decent. So first few times I had it clamped on the left side and I was pushing down on the right, and then I switched it over, and I think now we've got it pretty decent. So what that did is it revealed that my gap's a little tight here at the header, so I'll work that next. But we're doing to install. I've also taken the time to install the hood rubbers back here, and if you find that it doesn't support the hood, or it's pushing the hood up higher than the fender, you can kind of work with this flange and the mating flange by bending it one way or the other to try and get you that perfect sweet spot to where the fender and the hood line up pretty nicely. But we're doing pretty decent so far. And like I was saying before, I'm not going to mess with stripping the bottom of this hood. I'll let the painter deal with that. And the same thing, the fender from here down in, I'm going to let that be someone else's issue, because I'm just at the point where it's time to ship this.
When you're in these wealthy communities too, that's the other thing. All these other people.
Alright, now that I've got the angles down pretty nice the way I want them and everything fitting kind of good, I'm going to go ahead and start stripping this. It's original paint, it's lacquer, it's not too thick, so that shouldn't be an issue, but it's going to gum up the sandpaper and really suck. But okay, we're starting to get the stripper going and get it down, but it's just gumming up the paper so quickly that I went ahead and sandblasted some areas in the corner, but I want to see if I can try to get this area down And rather than using my shrinking disc, I think I'm going to try the shrinking tip on the arc panel beater and see what happens here. Gonna need some more heat. My trigger sticks on this, so I gotta watch it. I need a new trigger. It's working though. Okay, I've got you setting up on the hood, and I'm probably going to have to back it out and start using a little bit of hammer, but I can go a bit more there. That's really starting to be nice. It's amazing how sometimes the tools work the way you want them to, or the metal works the way you want it to. Gotta strip some more paint away there. And in here. A lot of that I'm going to be able to start hammering it down. Alright, now I just turned the camera off and I spent literally two and a half hours, well, 2.5 hours stripping this down, and you can see it's not completely stripped, but at least it's good enough to where I can start working it before I final prep it for some mud and some primer. I used about 8 of these bad boys to get it done, and now we're going to start pulling some dents. Alright, brief description of what we're seeing here and maybe an opportunity for an idea that I came across when it comes to storing these hoods that I'd be able to share with you. This is an original hood, flat hood from 67, 68 on this Camaro. Not original to the car, but original to the era. And I've gone ahead and had to clean up and sandblast pitting that is in all the bottom here from the way the hood was taken off a car and stored. And I've got to assume that it was stored outdoors in the dirt to where it was perhaps sunk over the years up to about an inch, inch and a half like this. And also what's happening here is the tip. This area comes to a point that tip has been ground off, perhaps from being slid around on the asphalt or perhaps from being set. So number one, the thing I'm going to share is if you're going to take a hood off a car to store it, and you're going to store it vertically standing up, store it on one of the long sides rather than on the points, because this is a nice long flat side. It'll be easier for that to take the load of the hood over the years. Either way, that wouldn't have worked with storing it in dirt to where it was going to get sunk, because instead this would have all been just buried in dirt. But that was just an idea that I've come across, and now every time I set a hood on the ground, I set it on a side. I don't set it on these tips. There's no point in that. But what I did over there and what I'm going to continue to do over here is I just took some 1/8 welding rod and I put some magnets here, formed it out to a point to where I just tacked the end, then I cut it to size, set it in there, and welded it up. And that's perhaps not the best way, but it's a good way to go ahead and take care of this flat spot, because I want that contour of the back of the hood where it meets the cowl vent to continue out to the point at which it was. Okay, so here's the setup. Just a few little magnets, the 1/8 inch welding rod put in. I just brought it to a point, and then I'll just chop off the little end, fit it, and weld it into place. Simple, quick, easy. Man, I just talked to Tyler. The car is leaving tomorrow. Tyler's the owner of the car. I'm super psyched. The car's not finished. It's got details, but hey, I'm not going anywhere. It's just gotten to a point where I've done all I can do on this. I just hope that everybody involved with the project really likes all the effort that I put into it. I know it could have been probably done cheaper, better, faster somewhere else, but I did give it my all, so I'm pretty psyched about that. I can't wait for him to get it and like start doing his touches, because these guys are badass motor builders, badass racers, and I think it's going to be pretty fun to start seeing what they contribute to the project. But I mean, you guys have been here for this whole thing. It hasn't been no little feat, and I've been dealing with this car for 18 months, which is the longest I've ever worked on a car, so I feel pretty good. The video series wasn't all I wanted it to be, but it also was probably the best I could do at the time. The best, I shouldn't say the best, I could have really dedicated myself to, but like when I thought of the ideas and when stuff was happening, I tried to grab the cameras. When it wasn't too hectic up here in my brain, I tried to grab the camera. And I know there's probably a lot of people out there who would build this stuff a lot better, but you know, hey, we fight all our battles the best we can. So a little impromptu as to where we are. The car's leaving tomorrow at 2. It's going out, getting some stuff done. We talked about it's getting some chassis modifications, subframe connectors, roll bar, chassis stiffeners, all that kind of thing. And to me, when you build a car to this level, I personally believe in, I think it's not a bad idea to have it in, completely in, fuel lines, brake lines, cooling, everything plumbed, everything ready to go. I think you should be able to fire that car up and drive it and go, and then send off all your finishes, all your powder coating, all your chrome, your paint work. I think all that, all your stainless trim, I think all that stuff should be done at the same time and then brought together. Because after paint, we don't want no guessing whether this and that, and we don't want any impromptu, which I'm totally guilty of, redneck style building stuff going along. That's kind of where my ideas are with it. But like I said, these guys who are building this car, totally freaking awesome dudes. So I really hope that they enjoy and appreciate, and that I live up to their ideals of what should have been done on our 67 Penske Camaro project. Alright, I'm going to do a flexible urethane, what do they call it? Flexible urethane foam between the roof skin that we put on and the structuring, and then with what I've got left, I might come around to the deck lid and hit it in a couple of spots between that outer skin and the inner structure, as well as the hood. It's just older panels and the stuff is dried out over time. This is what this urethane foam's consistency is. I saved a dab off it from a job I did probably, I don't know, 5 years ago. You can see it's still nice and forgiving. And so my thoughts with that is that as the sun heats up those outer panels like that roof, it's going to allow it to expand off that structural spot a little bit and then come back down without giving it that glued effect where it won't move. So that's what we're going to do next on that. And like I said, I've been using this for a few years, and like I kept a little dab of it, and it just pretty nice. Yeah, keep repeating myself.